Okay, so now we're going to review dangling modifiers, just so when you're reading a passage, you know what to do. We're Jacobit's Learning, our email address if you need us. So let's go on ahead and define what a dangling modifier is. And before we get into the definition, let's look at that it's not so much that they're not allowed to be used as it is that you have to think about what they're doing. They're used quite commonly. So dangling modifiers are adjectives or verbs which describe a noun, and actually I put this here ghost by not really modifying the meaning or describing a noun. And sometimes they don't ghost, they're just right there, but sometimes that's just what happens. So like for instance, when you get ready to choose, this is from an actual SAT with what goes here. I put this one on. This is the video before. This comes from an actual SAT. The reason this choice is considered a dangling modifier because you have street flooding. Now here's the thing. Flooding in this case becomes a noun, becomes a gerund. So when you put street here, this becomes an adjective, which we all know is a noun. Street is a noun. So now you kind of say that's dangling modifier. Same thing here, resulting pollution. Resulting is usually a verb. But here it is describing pollution. So, and pollution is a noun. So pollution is a noun. So guess what? See what I mean? It's a dangling modifier because you're not really describing what you want. The subject is mitigation of both street flooding and the resulting pollution, and neither one of them modify mitigation. Yet at the same time, you understand what they're talking about. And modify means to change, and in this case also means to describe. So this is a really hard part of standard American English that gets very hard, but still does what is needed. That's a D, folks, or describe. So like you're trying to describe in this sentence below, sorry about my bad handwriting, you are trying to describe the mitigation, but you're not really doing it. Instead, you start talking about street pollution and this and that and other, something else. This is your subject, and they don't really describe it, yet you understand what they're talking about. So it's not that it's unclear, it's just that it's really a bad description. That's the problem with the dangling modifier. So let's go. How you see flooding is modifying street. It's kind of not doing what it's supposed to. Okay, let's look at an easier version of dangling modifiers. Remember, they're supposed to change. Now, reading the book, Franz saw a house. Well, Franz is really your subject. Okay? And he's reading. And in this case, you consider this a dangling modifier because he's doing something, he's reading, and this and that, but he also saw a house. So in this way, it kind of ghosts. It kind of like says, I'm describing reading when really what I really did was I saw a house. But because this whole phrase is included before this comma, it becomes a dangling modifier. It also is a participial phrase. But if you're on a test and you get something like dangling modifier, that's what it is, because he's reading the book. And this is trying to describe an action he did, but it's dangling over here to itself. Franz saw a house. Okay, let's look at this one. Little Keith is watching the house. But guess what? Little Keith is really, again, your subject. I want to saw a spider. Hey, verb is saw. So why do you have another verb over here acting as a gerund? Because it is a dangling modifier. Again, it is not necessarily wrong. It's not necessarily bad to have one. It just complicates the English language, which it does because of how people speak. And you just are doing this to identify the verb and to identify like subjects and verbs and what's actually going on. So your dangling modifiers, a lot of time they look like this. Remember I used this word gerund? Gerund, it usually ends in ing, and it functions as a subject. But see, here's the problem with why it's a dangling modifier. This watching is not a subject because it needs somebody to do it who is little Keith. So you call this whole thing a dangling modifier. I'm going to put DM. Okay. That's how they work. Play it backwards. If you have any problems with jacobslearning@gmail.com. Have a good afternoon.